Man, that's a real shame when folks be throwing away a perfectly good podcaster like that.
Would you like to learn from those that are taking their lives, their businesses, and their passions to the next level? Best-selling author of Speakeasy and master connector Lou Diamond is here to connect you to some of the most inspiring and amazing people on this planet. Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to another spectacular, absolutely freaking awesome episode of Thrive Loud with Lou Diamond, connecting you to the most inspiring and amazing people that are thriving each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond, and today on Thrive Loud, we have the managing director of Strat Americas, a Los Angeles-based consultancy that provides strategic guidance and helps clients with media and technology partnerships. He's an experienced business development executive from the music industry, working with global artists such as Shakira and Ricky Martin, and have helped Spotify and Apple Music launch internationally. We're going to talk about media, technology, and have a lot of fun. Thrive Loud listeners, I bring you from Los Angeles, California, Seth Schachner. Seth, how are you today?
Good afternoon. Great to be here, Lou. Thank you for that nice introduction. I am, it's a really cold Monday here in Santa Monica. It's like 60 degrees or something, or 59. So I'm doing okay. I'm bundled up and all right and caffeinated.
Listeners know I'm recording this from just outside the New York area. We have just entered into the new year, and I'm not going to bother to complain about any of the things he just said because it's freezing over here. But no, it's good to have you on. I'm excited to have you here. You've got a pretty cool background, and kind of what I love to do to get the ball rolling here, Seth, is I want to go back. I don't want to go all the way back to the womb. I want to go back to how this stuff that you're doing now became your gig.
Awesome. No, I really appreciate it. Great to be here again. I was sitting in a role at a really big tech titan after 11 wonderful years at something that was Sony Music. And I was working at Microsoft, and I love those guys. They were great to me. But I was in a role there that, didn't draw on half of what I could do, and I think maybe it was a function of strategy where I sat in the organization, peculiarity in terms of being in Florida, where I was for many years. I've been out in LA for 4 years now and reporting into their headquarters in Seattle, and just not having the seniority to make something happen in a big way. And I kind of looked inwards and was like, why don't I do something on my own and use all the skills, all the knowledge, whether it's doing planning and strategy or working on the line and actually doing things with people and artists and partners, and most importantly, having all these relationships that I built up over a couple decades. Why don't I try something on my own? And that's kind of where it came from, if you will, the genesis of what I've been doing now. And it wasn't a very difficult thing to jump into, if you will. I had plenty of opportunities, people asking me to do projects and work, and I think it required a little bit of a headset shift in terms of just like saying, the gig economy could be for me, if you will, doing consulting work, taking on clients. It's not going to be as formal or as, permanent, if you will, as working as an employee in a big place, but it's worked out quite nicely for me.
Seth, the space you're in is not only a fascinating one, it's one that's on fire. When you think about how much music has always been an integral part of every aspect of business, but the convergence of media and technology and all the different ways that we connect. This podcast is being broadcast across every major medium that you can listen to, whether it's Spotify, Google, Amazon, Apple, whatever it might be, iHeartRadio, you name it. It's across those whole lane. And all these folks are all trying to figure out new relationships, new media ways, new things to incorporate their business. Help me understand what your superpower is here. You've had this great experience. You're now bringing it together and helping to provide really key decisions. What are the problems that the clients who you work with are coming to you for? What are you fixing for them, Seth?
Usually I mean, the risk of being cliched, it's all about business growth in some respects. That might be revenue growth. So it might be help me get a partnership in a certain part of the world that brings me revenue or allows me to have the rights I need to go out and build revenue. Sometimes it can be we need more audience, so bring us an artist or bring us a partner, maybe a mobile carrier that we can bundle in and helps us, say, grow in Latin America, as one example. And I think the sauce for me, the unique, differentiators that I bring to the market is I've been doing the function of business development, commercial business development, so partnerships, usually involving some type of IP or content. And that's distinct from sales, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's also distinct from investment work. But I've been doing that for, 25, 30 years now, going back to the early days of some of the first digital entertainment services. It was pretty early in the door at AOL. I was their first music person. And so I've been in a lot of outward-facing roles like that. Liberty, Viacom, 11 years at 3 different parts of Sony, a couple of years at Microsoft after that. And I also spent, just moved here, but I spent 13 years in Miami. I was with Sony for 11, and I ran their Latin business for 7. So I've got an unusually large amount of Latin American exposure for the average North American dude, if you will, or person. And I think those things have been real differentiators for me, as a consultant in the market. I will tell you that I've tried very much to stay in the functional lane of being what some of you might know who've worked with media companies or tech companies, what an in-house media business development person might do. I'm not out trying to do, accounting studies or trying to be a McKinsey consultant, and all of which are wonderful. But, I think there is an element of connectivity, introductions, deal making, sort of in that kind of chain, if you will, that I've kind of stayed in that lane, and that's helped me a lot too.
I keep thinking about the change in that industry. I'm going back now 20 plus years. I remembered when iTunes came out and you had all the music industry trying to figure out, oh my God, we're no longer selling CDs. We're now going and we're basically having downloads. And of course we had the whole Napster insanity within that. These partnerships, and by the way, I'm so glad that you're involved in the Latin American space specifically, because I have a wife who's from Colombia. And I'm a huge fan of the music. I'm also a huge fan of just how absolutely massive it is. For our listeners who don't understand it, compared to the U.S., the artists that are performing around the world, or specifically on the Latin American side, it is one of, if not the largest ones out there, it's certainly one of the fastest moving, and they're the most. They listen on all mediums. They're on YouTube. They're in every format are out there. Help paint that picture to give an understanding of how big that market is.
It's an awesome point. I mean, I'll start with the most basic, boring thing, which is just population. And if you look at what, say, Latin America is, and say, by the way, you throw in the Caribbean, I think it's 550 million, in terms of the population. Mexico's got, 110, Brazil's got 213, something like that. And, there's a lot of people to begin with. It's bigger than our country. Yeah. And, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of over-indexing on content and plays. And I think maybe to your point about Colombia, if you will, but probably the biggest thing that I picked up in Miami for many years, and Sony kind of schooled me in it, but I saw it in really vivid colors, just spending a lot of time in the region, is just the enormous amount of pride there is for local content, local repertoire, local catalogs. Maybe most Americans wouldn't know who an artist, let's just say, Roberto Carlos is from Brazil. He's probably elderly now, but if you look at sales charts, he's right up there with the Beatles in terms of what he's done. Or Vicente Fernandez, who recently passed in Mexico, who's literally like an Elvis Presley or Johnny Cash, if you will, in that country, hero. And these are along with lots of different types of local genres, if you will, of music, are incredibly important to that region. And so I think having that type of sensitivity and understanding is a huge piece, at least for music, to understand what it's all about. And that's even before we get to, you're probably mentioning, the rise of all this pop reggaeton stuff, whether it's Bad Bunny or Maluma, or whoever it might be.
I'll even go to Juanes, for that matter, who's absolutely ginormous in Colombia as well, or whatever it might be. But continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no, he's a really good guy. I've worked with him a lot. I know him as a hardworking dude from Key Biscayne in Miami, actually. And I mean, I bet you there were some people would say, "Oh man, he's old school, Dad. He's like Dad's music, or you too, the way he is too." And yeah, but no, the size and scale of things in some of these countries outside of ours, not just Latin America, but India, China, Asia for sure, is enormous. And sometimes people don't appreciate that. They kind of weave it into the American success story of American releases, if you will, and that only gets about half the story, if you ask me.
I want to bridge two gaps here about connecting, merging together, and I'm going to use a funny example about this as it relates to music. We'll bring it all home. 3 years ago, Despacito came out, and Despacito was not only the number one listened to song the entire year, it was the most viewed video on YouTube. And what's more important, it actually had passed at that point the guy from Korea whose name blanks me right now. It passed him for whatever song he had.
Right.
But it was the time and the frequency in which it did it. It actually did it in half the amount of time, that many more views and listens and clicks.
Yeah.
And by the way, American artists partnered with this. Justin Bieber had partnered with them. Now the question is this, though. We had 2 years ago the most watched Super Bowl halftime show with J-Lo and Shakira. And the businesses that have partnered and tried to figure out how to dive into that, and that's what I want to go with. As you're trying to look at companies trying to bring the music, the technology, and that genre all together, would you say it's a competitive landscape?
I'd say it's a different landscape in terms of the local market stuff and the conditions that bring those out to market than, say, the North American or European birthing grounds for stars and content, if you will. It isn't better or worse. It's just different, a different playing field. And what I mean by that is that going back to this point about, let's just pick Latin America, for example. Sometimes corporations will carve it into 4 or 5 pieces, and that's probably unfair. But if you're managing a company, maybe it's a rational way to say, there's an Andean region, there's Brazil, there's Mexico and Central America, there's the Cono Sur, the South, which is Argentina, Chile, blah, blah, blah. And there's the Caribbean, there's something called the U.S. Latin market as well, which is enormous and important. And all of them have like really different identities, by the way, and different stories. And so I mean, to be honest with you, Sony wants me to say this, but whatever. I don't think Jennifer Lopez is going to be the same level of star in Chile as she is in the United States Latin market. And the same thing goes for Brazil. There's all kind of parallels there where music doesn't always cross. And I think it's due to the fact that there's just a lot of local complexity and local diversity and richness of culture within all these countries, basically. So that's just a short means of saying there's a lot of different operating conditions, but there are things that can rise into the stratosphere. I guess Bad Bunny is a good example. Malum was a good example. Ricky Martin actually is a great example. Stars like Ricardo Arjona. I can go long ways with this. That I think in some respects kind of go into the stratosphere, if you will, as regional stars, and some of them become maybe global if they're lucky.
Oh. The tech space and the media space and helping to find the right partnerships. First of all, the tech space, when I'm referring to that, I'm talking about all the means in which the platforms that continue to change every minute. And, a year ago we would have this conversation and we would just be hearing about the growth of of TikTok picking up, and now it's just ginormous. And there's all these pressures for all the traditional companies who you're probably helping with the right strategy on how they can play in this space, figure out where the right place to be is, where to go with it. How do you stay sharp on all of this? And when you're making the deals, have you seen, is anything different today in putting together business development deals versus the way it was when you first started out? What's maybe been the consistent part of your business, and maybe what's changed the most?
That's a great question. Yeah, there's been an enormous amount of change even in the last 10 years in terms of like the complexion of what's really successful. And, a lot of what I do, whether I work on it directly for a client, or someone else does, and I do a different aspect of what a client picks me up to do, usually tracks back to rights. So who owns what, and what are they willing to give you, and what can you go out and exploit on what medium and what platform? And, sometimes that can be dictated by an artist contract, or a repertoire content owner, if you will. And I think in the last 3 or 4 years, with the rise of TikTok and other competitive services, the biggest thing in the market now is just the rise of the connection between social media and audiences and artists, and meaning that deal making doesn't necessarily have to go back to a label or a rights holder. It can be some new type of content that the artist creates that is supported by sponsors or advertising revenue or some other type of subscription. And the platforms themselves kind of have to figure out where the licenses need to be locked into, basically. And that's changed the dynamic a lot. I think I think a lot of folks are looking at TikTok now, and I'm pretty sure TikTok's out trying to figure out a way to license so that it can build a spot permanently, if you will, or long term in the space. I think that's a really new and important dynamic. Snap. I've been working with an app called Smule for about 6-7 years now that is karaoke and social music, and plenty of others, basically, Band Labs, another one, that are all kind of playing in this space, if you will, of social music, collaborative music. And I think the types of tools and licenses and rights they need kind of vary depending on what they're doing. So it's not uniform anymore, and there's a lot of money being made out even in the advertising supported market now as well.
I was going to ask a question, but I was going to hold myself back. But I'm just going to dive there for a quick second as a little, like, we'll call it like navigating off a side street. You must deal with a lot of lawyers and a lot of contracts and deals, no?
Yeah. I mean, I've been a consultant for 12 years now, and sometimes I will. I mean, what I usually do is my sweet spot in the market as a consultant is like a small to mid-sized company that maybe has some funding to hire me a little bit. I mean, I work on a retained model just for, and I'm sure a lot of my fellow consultants know the distinction between that and any other types of models. And usually, I'm not a lawyer, and so usually they'll pick me up and go, get us to the president. We want to get a deal done. Go as high as you can, right. And navigate. So sometimes, but not so often. Actually, I'm more of a biz dev person, and lawyers are good partners. They've empowered me all along the way at Sony and Jive Records, and So anyway.
Yeah. When this podcast is over, we're gonna.
But I know them though. I know them all though. But anyway,
we'll end up playing the business geography game because there's a lot of people in those labels that we'll talk about afterwards who've even been guests on this show. We'll chat after. Right. I love asking this question, but I want to make it very clear specifically. You sit at the bridge in helping companies put together the right advice, the right guidance in a specific niche. What do you like more, Seth? Do you like the new technology? Do you like being around the media? Do you like the content, in this case, obviously the music, the assets? Or do you like just being the one to figure out how to make it all work?
I think what has given me the most satisfaction has primarily been able to connect business propositions and help companies grow, honestly, whether it's with artists or enterprise partnerships. And I think there's a lot of value I bring from the Latin markets. Hopefully you're hearing, basically, not exclusive to that. And that's been much more satisfying to me, I think, than anything. And I work, a lot of my practice now is outside the scope of music. I've had clients like IPSY, that's a cosmetics subscription, and Microsoft's been a client for AI, just purely for marketing, and had some really interesting Web3 clients as well. And I think it is more about bringing it together with some guidance. Hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Let's approach this person, and we can figure out the business model once we've kind of gotten in the door and opened it up and open things up a little bit for you. So that's what brings me probably the most satisfaction. I mean, do have a lot of background in music. I mean, it's funny because I advise students now, and I'm an adjunct professor, and I do always get a lot of career questions from some of the younger students, if you will, and got a lot of personal passion for music. And usually the first thing I say to them is you got to sort of park some of that personal passion at the door or compartmentalize it, because you want to get paid for what you do and build a skill around what you're good at doing. And that may not have anything to do with the fact that you love the new Billie Eilish single. It usually doesn't. I know it did for me. And that's an important thing that sometimes people don't know when they walk in the door. I imagine it applies to film and TV and lots of other mediums as well. So,
I love asking guests this question, and Seth, I'm so curious to see where this goes. Look, you've had a thriving career in one industry. You've got a practice of your own that you've been helping to grow, and you're thriving, which means on most days you're kicking on all cylinders. But we all have those days when we're a little off our game. Seth Schachner, when you have trouble thriving, what practice do you seek, or maybe which individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
I love to do some exercise, or I've got a lot of places to ride my bike or walk my dogs in Santa Monica. And, we've got beautiful weather and air out here, and it helps me a lot. It grounds me tremendously, basically. And I also like to talk to people all around the country, from all walks of my career. I've got some mentors that I can always draw on. And those days when I've been troubled enough, at least from a professional standpoint, to actually call my old boss, whatever it is, those have been pretty few and far between, actually, because I think I've gotten to a point where I can handle some of it. But I have a great partner who's also an attorney, does something very different from me. She's in special education. We've been together for 30 some odd years, so she's probably the biggest sounding board privately for me. I was at a certain point about 5 years ago, where I was in Miami and I felt I needed to be in a bigger city. And I'll be diplomatic about it. There was a lot of angst around it, okay? And she probably took most of the angst, but and we figured out a way at a certain point in life to move to a bigger city against the grain of what many of my fellow Americans are doing.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're like the one person going against the stream, where basically half of LA moved into South Beach, as I understand it.
I heard that. Well, I hope it's going well. I watched all the crypto news and all that. So I love it here. It's a bigger, diverse city. And you can do everything from, the past weekend, I did everything from going to see the Rams to the LA Philharmonic to a cooking class in Koreatown, and, all in 3 nights. And there's just so much to do here. And I love that. And I love being in a big, diverse metropolis. So that's helped me enormously, actually.
Love it. Let's do the admin part of the show. Seth, share with the listeners all the places people can learn about you, websites, social handles. We'll put it on the show notes. Gets more engagement when they hear from you.
The best place is LinkedIn, and it's just I'm Seth Schachner, SethSchachner on LinkedIn. But you can definitely catch me at my website, which is stratamericas.com, www.stratamericas.com. My Twitter is at Seth A. Schachner, and those are always really good places to catch me. I do a lot of media commentary on television as well. And I usually post it on LinkedIn or on the site. So, when Taylor Swift is in the news or things like that, I got to get up.
So I was going to go there. I'll jump this. I was so curious. At the time we're recording this, obviously, we're only a few weeks after what some are calling the Ticketmaster Live Nation debacle, which was, literally pushing off the day the tickets launched because there was such demand for it. I'd love to hear. I want your take on this. Before we go down Fun Street here on the show. This is, should Live Nation and Ticketmaster be one of the same organization? Is this collusion at its highest form?
No, it's not. That's not the key take. I mean, the key thing on this, it's twofold. And I'm probably you're gonna be the first to hear this part of it. But I mean, it's unquestionably an operational disaster of the first order. I think anyone would admit that. They could have anticipated this given the signups and the response rate. They could have staggered ticket sales by market, but so unquestionably it was an operational disaster. However, if you just looked at the graph, you can see it on Ticketmaster's business website of the demand that came through for this. I mean, it would crush anything. So that's the second. To your first question, no, I don't make much of that. Okay. And that's great. Create some give venues the opportunity to choose their own ticketing services. God bless. Create some competition. Let's see what happens. Let's see how all these other services. The other thing, the biggest thing that no one's talking about, what they should do is go out and focus on these bots and the bot farms.
Yes.
And do everything they can to eliminate that, whether it's with laws or with technology, because that was what the real issue was. That's it.
Several weeks before and I while I love Taylor Swift and my daughter is a big fan of hers.
She's great.
I'm a bigger Bruce Springsteen fan, and I witnessed that several weeks before when Bruce's tickets had dropped. And first of all, go listen to Bruce's conversation when he heard how much people had to pay for certain tickets. This guy. Yeah. He was livid with the way the model worked because those bots were driving ticket prices up to 5 digits to go see him, on a performance. Yeah. So I look, I get supply and demand on certain things. I think the issue in that particular thing was they've created such a sense of urgency and an impossible to beat model when you're battling against, like computers and systems and bots that are not only driving up the price, but making the whole purpose of what was supposed to be. It was just basically a way to say, how can we make sure we allocate tickets at one moment? I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think the goal in the artist, and I believe this, I don't think their goal was to let's make these tickets absolutely the most obnoxious prices that have ever been paid, unless you think otherwise.
Correct. No, I mean, for sure. I mean, and I watched the Springsteen. I don't know if it was the same interview. He was interesting because the boss was dancing a little bit, but he did say very, very clearly, I want my band to get paid, what they're deserved. And so there are people, by the way, who will pay for these prices. And so they were actually trying to do the right thing here, which is they wanted to give their fans a first crack, Taylor did, at tickets. And they also wanted to price it competitively so that it would put more money in the hands of the artists. The artists do set the price and choose the venues. So there's a ton of noise and confusion with people who don't understand how this works. And I don't make much of the idea of some wholesale surgical restructuring of a company. For sure, it's got quirky businesses, but there's some pretty lightweight and simple solutions that could be there. And at the end of the day, I think that is the biggest platform in the U.S. right now for these things. By the way, just happened in Mexico last week. I want to say, was it Bad Bunny's show?
Yeah, I heard
there was a ton of fake tickets, actually. So Fish has had problems like this. There's been Harry Styles did. So it's not new, but she definitely has really vocal fans. And they should figure out operationally how to do this a little bit better. But, Live Nation isn't the evil thing that they're making it out to be. So
it's tough to compare it because we're dealing with totally different venues. They should call in Lin-Manuel Miranda, who managed to do something very unique with Hamilton tickets because there is such a demand and they wanted to avoid having the bot craziness thing there. So they've created a certain lottery system, but it's all closed circuited and it's locked in on the certain ways you need to do it.
Yeah, right. I think Pearl Jam has done something with the no resale thing. So, but none of these things are perfect, and but they do need to kind of clean up their act in terms of the operations. And from what I'm hearing, there's going to be a congressional hearing next month, and I'm hopeful that you'll hear some interesting ideas arout the bots because we could do another podcast, but we didn't really talk about AI and bots and TikTok. But there's a ton of interesting stuff in front of us that is kind of threatening and weird and, isn't so positive actually that people, I think, need to figure out how to deal with. And it's possible that, legal frameworks around it could be helpful actually. So
I think, Seth, we invite you back next year because when we finally learn how much money Taylor Swift made on this year's tour and when all those numbers come in, we'll come back and we'll take a look and see how it all works. I think it's a good idea. All right. You ready to do me a favor? We did the plug. Now I would love you to do this. I'd love you to share with the listeners what you shared with me. Was one of your all-time favorite movies. Do you remember what you shared?
Just one? I can't do a couple.
You can give a couple. Yeah? You can give a couple. It's okay.
Oh, man. Apocalypse Now. Carnal Knowledge. American Werewolf in London. How about that?
You also said a fun movie. I want to talk about this one because I actually like it a lot. Lost in Translation.
Oh, love it. Yeah.
That was your suggestion. I'm going by your note, what you put down.
Okay. I forgot about this.
But why does Apocalypse Now, the one you came to, why did that movie connect so much with you?
It was at a point in my life when I was just becoming an adult. My folks took me to see it where I grew up in D.C., this beautiful theater called the Uptown Theater. And it was just of a size and scope and had some historical complexity to it. My father had been in the service during Vietnam, and it just really resonated with me, basically. I hadn't seen something like that, the scenes with Colonel Kurtz and going in to get him, which just was awesome, basically.
It's a tough one. I rewatched it not too long ago, and I forgot how amazing it was. And Sheen was pretty awesome in it, too. Let's do the speed round here of Fun Street, and this is how this rolls, Seth. I'm going to ask you something. I want the first thing that comes to your mind. These are things that make you thrive, basically. They lift you up, but I just want the first thing that comes to mind. Don't think too hard about the answer.
Okay.
Ready? As I'm going to save this one for the end because this one we'll close with. What's a favorite food of yours that's not a dessert?
Eggplant.
Oh. Favorite dessert?
Cheesecake.
New York or Italian?
Italian.
An activity you wish you did more of?
Boating.
An activity you wish you did less of?
Oh. Going to get groceries.
An activity you really want to try that you've never done before?
Scuba diving.
Okay. If I could snap my fingers and Seth Schachner could be anywhere in the world, where is he?
Morocco.
If I could ask you to pick a song that you're listening to right now, or one that pumps you up, one that's in your head. I know you've been across a lot of different music throughout your career and probably been dancing around it. What's a song that's kind of like your jam right now?
Right now, huh? I've been listening to that new Taylor Swift single a lot. I mean, this is.
I can't get the rights for that one. No. Just kidding.
Oh yeah, this is hard because hold on. I mean, I'm a music head basically.
I know, this is why I knew this would be tough. All right, so here I'm going to switch the question.
I'm going to give you one. I'm going to give you one. It's called "Nobody's Sweetheart," and it's by Caitlin Rose. I'm a big fan of hers. Just came out. Okay,
I like that. And now here comes a good one. You have a chance to go see any living performer that's still performing at any concert venue. We don't have to worry about it. You're going to get tickets because we're going to just hand it to you right here and there. Who would you love to see?
Any living performer. Who would I love to see?
Not including Dylan, because I'm convinced he's dead.
Yeah. I mean, you don't understand something. I've seen everyone actually. So, and I've got.
That's why I'm asking. I know. That's
from Bowie to Prince. I didn't get a chance to see the new Bono thing around his book, and he was just here 2 weeks ago. It was the football game, and I think they rescheduled dates. And they made a difference to me growing up for sure in college in New York, and so. I'd like to see that for sure. I mean, I've seen everyone from the Stones to McCartney and all that lately as well. Some really cool bands. Just saw the Mutantes from Brazil. They're so great. I'm really spoiled with music, so I'm not short in that category.
Like it. Seth Schachner, everybody, check out all the links that we have here. Mr. Strat Americas, we're so glad to have you here. Thank you for coming on the program.
This was fun. I enjoyed being on the show. This was cool. This was maybe the best podcast I've done.
Well, you did a spectacular job, and thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
I liked it a lot. Thanks for having me.
You got it. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep moving onward and upward. And remember, be brief, be bright, be gone.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.